Episode 5 of 24 Legacy just dropped. If you haven't been tracking along with all of my reviews up to this point, I've been really disappointed in this season of 24. As I've said many times, 24 is one of my absolute favorite shows of all time. So when they said that they were going to do a new season, it's like a soft reboot, it's a continuation of the continuity, but with a new cast of characters, I was very excited for that because I've never been limited to the idea that Jack Bauer is 24. No, the idea of 24 is what 24 is. And so the idea of more of it with the different cast and crews all sounds good to me. However, I just have not enjoyed this season very much up to this point in time. But before it started, I said I wanted to really try to do a weekly recap review of each of the episodes. So that's what I'm doing. And kind of my big problems with this season are, well, pretty simple. First one is that the plot points seem very derivative of 24. It's stuff I felt like we've seen before, and that happened with all the later seasons of 24. After about season 5 of 24, it started feeling pretty derivative of itself. And it's not the worst 24 this season, but it's also far from the best. So that's problem number one, is that there's a lot of derivative plots. But really the big problem I've had with the season, and somewhat not fully resolved in this episode, but improved, but the big problem this season, I think that's really highlighting the derivative nature of the plot and some of the weak writing, is that the characters are so weak and poorly written. Here's what I mean by this. Like when you watch the very first episode of 24, the original series, just like a small character in the first episode, George Mason, Jack Bauer's kind of boss in it, you learn very quickly that he's kind of a Weasley, selfish, cynical CTU agent, but he's not fully a bad guy. He's just selfish. And there's layers to him. He's not evil bad guy or good guy. He's a guy that's selfish. And so Jack takes him out and does this whole plot line. But if you were to describe George Mason, you would describe that he's this guy that's been around too long and has just become selfish and doing things for his own benefit. Compare that with guys in this current season. The new boss in CTU that gets knocked out, similarly paralleling what happened to George Mason in this season, is just by the books CTU boss man. If you asked me to describe him, his personality, kind of what makes him interesting, I would just say he's kind of stock CTU boss man guy. Same with the guy that runs the task force for CTU. I could not tell you anything about him except he's task force CTU guy. And that's kind of the problem with this season. And so, one of the plot lines involves Senator Ingram. And just so this is all spoilers in here. I'm assuming you've seen all this. Senator Ingram's chief of campaign manager is a Muslim that gets framed for being a part of these terrorist acts and selling out the Green Beret guys. Or the Army Rangers. But her whole character is she works for him as his campaign manager and she's a good Muslim. That's it. That's her character, is that she's not like the bad terrorist Muslims. She's a good one, which is in and of itself kind of offensive, but that's her whole character. I couldn't tell you anything about her other than I guess she's thin-skinned because she's offended the people that she knows were suspicious when a tape showed up of her doing criminal activities. But we don't know anything about her. Another character in it is an analyst. He's kind of the current equivalent of Chloe O'Brien. If you were to describe Chloe O'Brien, you would say that she's this very brilliant computer analyst that has no people skills, that's very blunt and kind of rude, but she loves people. She just doesn't really know how to show it, and she's very loyal. Early on, you could describe her on that level. Current analyst guy, all we know about him is that he's a good analyst, and he works with people he knows, and he's gay. But personality, what makes him unique, we don't know. They just kind of picked one person was the Muslim, this one is the gay guy, and they used that as the way to give them depth, but they didn't write an interesting character. They just put a stock CTU man and then put a label on them that resonates with a group of people. I couldn't tell you anything about them outside of their label and what happened to them in these episodes. Like I said, George Mason, Weasley guy. Chloe O'Brien, rude, blunt. You describe her personality, the way she's wired. I don't know anything about these other guys. And that's the whole cast of characters are people I don't know anything about them. They're just stock characters. Therefore, I'm not interested in them. So that brings us to this episode, and it's just kind of more of the same. So this episode actually tried to build some character development, but it was towards the high school terrorist character, where there's this whole plot line about this girl that's a high schooler that's a terrorist, and she kills one of her friends, then found out stuff about them, and so she starts crying like she didn't want to kill him. This episode, we go back to her home, and we get her home life, and we meet her brother, and her brother's kind of trying to pull into terrorism, and the dad comes home, and it gives us this whole backstory that makes her not just this cardboard character that we hate, but we hate her still because she killed a high schooler that was her friend. And so then they're giving us depth to her and these weird family dynamics that we needed this with some of the characters 4 episodes ago. So when we got started, we actually liked them. But to say that this is the kind of depth that you need to the characters for us to care about what's going on, whereas most of the characters, we don't know this type of information. Unfortunately, for some odd reason, the one character that they're developing is a high school terrorist. Continuing on with some of the other plot lumps with Senator Ingram and his dad. In the last episode, it was discovered that Senator Ingram's dad, who's the actor's only 7 years older than him, which is a very strange casting choice, that he's actually behind getting the Ranger guys killed and setting the plot in motion for the season. And so Ingram calls in the police. He is arrested and interrogated just a little bit in this episode. They don't go too far down that one. We got a big development the last one. This one is just kind of like an update on what's going on, which leads to kind of the good in this episode, and that's that the actual progression of Carter getting in on the action kind of takes place. This is kind of a good and the bad, though. So the last episode ends with Carter committing treason by sabotaging CTU, knocking out their systems, kidnapping a guy or freeing a guy, gets responsible for getting activation codes to terrorists to activate so that the whole country is in danger, this whole city is in danger because of this one guy. He breaks him out. So this is kind of treasonous acts, shuts down CTU at the worst time possible. The episode picks up. Carter's on the phone with CTU guy, and they're like, hey, you should just come back. You're in big trouble. He's like, I can't. We got to go talk to these guys. That's our only hope. Really? You trust your buddy? He's kind of crazy. He's our only hope. Just give me backup. I mean, just this conversation is just bizarre in light of what happened in the episode 5 minutes earlier in the timeline. He committed treason. He shut down CTU. Like, Carter, I know you think you're doing the right thing, but you're going to get the death penalty for this. Like, you committed treason. Like, you can't do... No, they're just going to back him up because, you know, he's the lead of the show, so he can do whatever he wants. This guy doesn't... Carter doesn't even work at CTU. You can't... There's, like, none of the correlations, none of the things that made it so that Jack could have the relationship credibility, the positional credibility, the trust because he worked with Palmer, who became President Palmer. All the things that made it so Jack Bauer could do this crap. He has none of it. He's got one friend over there that doesn't even work there anymore. And the episode picks up and kind of plays out Carter's storyline. At least kind of some interesting stuff's happening there involving Carter getting in on the action. But all in all, it just was frustrating because the central premise of it just makes no sense. Like, he just committed an act of treason. Why is CTU pretending, like, just kind of like, shrugging it off as if nothing happened there? And then we get to the wife subplot where Carter's wife is with Carter's brother. In the last episode, some people tried to kill Carter's brother. The wife saves him, gives him a heads up. People try to kill the wife as well. So the plot line of this episode is the brother has gone crazy. And he's trying to he's roughing up his own guys, trying to figure out who sold him out. He's pulling guys in, getting ready to torture him to get words out of him. And so the wife wants to leave. And some guys walk up to her and they're like, hey, you know him and you known him a long time. He went crazy whenever you left. And then they have this heart-to-heart conversation where this guy convinces her to stay to try and convince the brother to stop being crazy. And the rationale is that he's crazy because she left. And it's ignoring the fact that he's probably crazy because he's an aggressive gangster that was almost killed 20 minutes ago. 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes ago in the plot line, like the actual timeline. Someone tried to kill him 15 minutes ago, so someone just tried to kill me. I'm probably a little bit crazy, paranoid, and yelling at people. But, and that's kind of summarizing all the plot lines real quick. That's why I'm so frustrated by this season. Each of these plot lines just have holes that are just gigantic, where you go, he's not angry because of something that happened 3 years ago and he changed because she left. I mean, maybe that is true. Right now, he's acting crazy because someone tried to kill him. That's just what happened. And like kind of ignoring things like this. And just throughout all the plot lines, there's a big hole in it. That's all I can focus in is on the hole, because I don't care about the characters enough. 24's always had the problem of extra plot lines that are kind of tangential to what's going on, just to give one of the lead characters something to do. They've always done that. But when you really care about Jack and David Palmer, you can put up with the fact that Kim Bauer's fighting cougars in the woods. You can put up with like her being kidnapped and, hanging out at some guy's house, because you care so much about these other characters. And even she's kind of an interesting character because she's just acting like a obnoxious teenager stuck in a ridiculous situation. But here, it's just like, we don't care about any of these characters, and the only one they're giving us depth to now is a high school terrorist, and it's the character that I hate the most. Like, they're trying to kind of, I don't know, even say the redeem her thus far, but it seems like they're trying to set up the path to redeem her. But she's irredeemable. She killed her friend from high school because he was trying to not be dead. And so she's a horrible person that's working with terrorists, and so if she doesn't get shot in the face by Carter in the end of this, it's not a very satisfying conclusion to this sociopath's plotline. So, very strange. And like I said, if you just think through the earlier seasons, especially the first 5 seasons of 24, and you think through the smaller characters, Tony Almeida, he was a guy that was jealous of Jack's relationship with Nina Myers, but he was a good guy and actually a buddy of Jack, and he just was suspicious of what was going on in the elements. Jack was acting shady, so he was treating him like he was acting shady. He was a nuanced character that you didn't immediately like. He wasn't naturally charismatic, but he's a good guy, so you grow to like him. And you can just go Edgar Stiles in seasons 4 and 5. He's this weird, dopey guy that's obsessed with Chloe, and he likes rules, doesn't like to... You start describing personality traits to them. You don't just think immediately about some superficial label you would put on them. And even though, like in Edgar's case, he's a very big guy, you immediately think about his weird, quirky personality, not the physical traits. This season, you just go through it and you just go... She's the Muslim character, that's good. Oh, he's like a ranger guy, and he's a black guy, so he's got ties to his gangster brother. And it just feels almost offensive to the level to which it's just putting up a stereotype of a different category from society. And it's very weird and very frustrating that these aren't characters, that we're not getting a new version of 24 that gave us a follow-up to Jack Bauer that has the depth of a Jack Bauer. It's just... Yeah, he's a guy that's good at shooting people. He's now that he's back, he wants to get back into it. That's not giving a character. We're not getting his personality and things. So anyway, that's my take on it. I want to like it. I really do. 24 is one of my favorite shows. Why do I keep doing these reviews? Because I told myself really try to get through it. I'm thinking about stopping if I don't like the next episode, and I didn't really like this episode, so maybe I'll stop after this one. The feedback's not very good in the comments, and the feedback has not been great in the comments. I promise the reason I don't like it is not that I'm a racist. These just are not good characters, and the plot line is derivative, and thus it just feels like a dated show with uninteresting characters. That feels like a shadow of its former self. That's my take on it. Tell me your thoughts about it in the comments section. Another week, another episode I don't care for, unfortunately.